Today I want to talk to you about your daily illustration schedule. Your daily illustration routine. If you want to make it as an illustrator and learn fast and improve fast, I believe you have to have a routine, a daily illustration practice, whatever that means to you. Having a creative career doesn't necessarily evoke a picture of routine and discipline, but it's the quickest way to success. If you're determined to get ahead and become a professional quickly, you should do a little bit every day. And you can treat this as an experiment and plan it out. If you set a routine, you know exactly what's happening every day. You know exactly how many clients you're going to email, you know exactly when you're going to do your illustration work each day and how long you're going to do it for. If you don't plan, then you have to make those decisions every day. If you have to decide every day what you're going to do, if you're going to do it, and how long you're going to do it for, you're making your life way more difficult than it needs to be. You are using your limited thinking energy, no offense, to make those decisions daily, over and over, leaving you less energy to spend on creating new work. Make the decision once. That's famously why Steve Jobs only wore one outfit. He didn't want to waste his brain power on deciding what to wear every day. Let me save you some more of your brain power now. If you subscribe right now, then it's done and you can tick it off your to-do list. If you don't plan ahead, you'll probably end up doing a lot less because every day is 50-50. Whether you work or not, you might as well flip a coin when you wake up. If your baseline is, I am going to do 3 hours illustration every day, then you don't need to decide, you just need to do. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, talked about breaking the chain when it came to his comedy writing. He'd do a certain amount every day and check it off his calendar, and the more red X's you get on your calendar in a row, the less likely you are to want to break the chain. How good are you going to feel if you get through a whole month and you've done a little bit of illustration every day? How much are you going to have learned? If you do 2 hours a day for a month, that's 60-ish hours. You can make a hell of a lot of progress in 60 hours. You can learn a hell of a lot in 60 hours. Once you're a month in, then it's part of your routine. It's a habit. It's locked in. And you'll continue by default then, hopefully. Rather than having to think about it, it's just part of your life. There's a couple of great books about developing habits. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'll link to them in the description. They're great books, definitely worth a read. We're only human though. If you miss a day down to illness or other life tasks you've committed to, or let's face it, being hungover, it's not the end of the world. Sure, you'll break your chain, but 29 days out of 30 is still a hell of an achievement. Don't let breaking the chain for one day derail the whole rest of the month. Once you get into this pattern, those 1 or 2 days that you missed crossing off in your calendar are really going to annoy you. The next month, you'll promise yourself you'll do better because you want that personal achievement of crossing off every day with a big red X. This is something I've done for years, not the whole time and not always successfully, but when I really commit to it, it works well. I use it for exercise, healthy eating, quitting smoking, reading, writing, all kinds of things. Look at this screenshot of my exercise routine for last month. I'm so annoyed about that missing day. Somehow I just managed to forget. But it's still a pretty good month. It's a hell of a good month. When I started this channel, I used it for writing about different subjects. For 3 months I did a little bit every day, every single day. And I had 20-something articles or scripts or whatever you want to call them ready to go. Then I had to learn about filming, video and recording, sound, editing and all those technical skills I had no idea about before. I did a little bit every day. I started recording and putting out the videos on a weekly schedule that I stuck to for 25 weeks. Not that amazing in the grand scheme of things, but I feel good about it. I've achieved something there. Towards the end of that first block of videos, season 1, let's call it, I ran out of obvious ideas that I wanted to share with you. It became more difficult to sit at the computer looking at a blank page, thinking about what to write. The weather also got really good, so I let my daily schedule slide. I got out of the habit. I'm sure you can relate to that blank page problem as an illustrator. It's very, very easy to run out of ideas, but that's a great time to expand your horizons and learn a bit more and find less obvious sources of inspiration. The most important thing for this kind of process is setting manageable, realistic targets. If you start out thinking I'm going to do 5 hours a day illustration and email 50 clients a week, you might be dreaming there. 2 hours a day and 2 clients a day. as a baseline rate is far more achievable. Start small and test yourself. Build it up slowly in a way that's manageable. You might end up doing more some days, you might do less some days, but you won't be overfaced with such a gigantic looming goal every morning. So you'll do it. It'll be far easier to commit to doing a little bit every day if you make it really easy for yourself. I've got a list of books as long as my arm that I want to read. So at the moment I have a goal of reading for 20 minutes a day. I can definitely find the time for that. Previously my goal was 1 hour a day, which might not sound like a lot for some people, but I just couldn't stick to it. And as a result, I'd probably only do that 2, maybe 3 days a week. But I'm currently on a chain of 70 something days of reading 20 minutes a day, and I'm making more progress on my reading list than I ever have before. And it's easy. That said, I haven't done it today. I need to do that next. I think there's probably a minimum time you'll need to commit to for creative work. I'm not sure about this, but if you only do half an hour on an illustration every day, you might not have the chance to really get into the zone with it. You'll have to experiment with that and see what works for you. If you start the month saying I'm going to do 1 hour a day, you might find it's not really enough for you to feel energized by the work you're making, and you'll need to commit to more. But that's useful knowledge in itself. You might also find in this experiment that you try at different times of day to fit your illustration work in. Try it late at night, try it before breakfast. I can't count the number of writers I've read about that say they need to get in a good writing session early in the morning before they get distracted by their daily tasks. It's got to be worth a try. Equally though, you might start out optimistically at 3 hours a day. If you're a young student with no real responsibilities, it seems easy enough, but everyone's different. It might be too difficult to concentrate for 3 hours straight, so you might split that up into 2 sessions a day, or cut it down to 2 hours a day. The longer you try this out and the more you see the progress that you can make with the little and often approach, the more you're going to see the value in it and enjoy it. Then that 2-hour session climbs back up to 3. Once you start getting paid for the work, it's going to be far easier to commit to 4 or 5 hours a day, and before you know it, you're a full-time illustrator. Those small but regular incremental improvements really stack up. A little practice every day for a year and the improvement will be immeasurable. Treat it as an experiment and find out what works for you. There's a certain romantic appeal to a creative lifestyle, but the reality is quite different for people that really want to make it in their chosen fields, whatever that might be. If you have a trust fund and you want to spend your days sleeping and nights partying with a bit of creative work whenever you feel like it, you're not going to be successful. Unless you also happen to work in your underwear and document it on Instagram. There's a few of those around that seem to be doing quite well. For most people, you really have to commit to be the best you can be. You have to work hard. You have to find your way through the swamp of mediocrity to make your mark. You have to treat it like a job, which it is if you want it to be. But let's face it, if you're straight out of college, actually doing 8 hours a day hard work is going to be a struggle, especially if you're not getting paid. You have to find a way to ease yourself into it. You might want to dive in head first and you might have all the enthusiasm in the world, but I would encourage you to start at a steady pace and build it up. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's far, far better to do a little bit every day than to burn yourself out after a few weeks of intense effort. That's especially important if you have a day job. You're not always going to feel like doing 5 hours illustration in an evening after a shift at your job, but you might be able to manage an hour. You might, as part of this routine experiment, think about giving yourself goals in terms of the work that you produce. 1 illustration a week or something like that. I'd never really given this much thought until now. It seems like a good goal to have, 1 illustration a week or 1 a fortnight or whatever suits your style of work. But the more I've thought about it, the more I think it might actually restrict your creativity while your primary goal is learning and getting better. You should give yourself the freedom to get deep into some really long projects if you want to, because there's a lot of value in doing that. You might find that the self-imposed time restrictions you put on yourself means you rush things and you don't strive for perfection. Equally, that kind of regular output isn't really reflective of a typical freelance career. By all means, you should try and impose some restrictions on the way you work. Maybe give yourself a 3-day project, then you could do a 2-week project. I think that's probably good for the creative process. But not every project will require the same amount of time or effort once you establish yourself, so you should try to practice like that too. You'll also hopefully be working on multiple projects at the same time, so it's worth experimenting with how to do that. that's a skill in itself. The bottom line is, if you want illustration to be a career, then prioritize it, make time for it. You'll probably have to have a day job at first to support yourself, but if you really want it, it can be done. And the quicker you can get from A to B, the better. And that is all I have to say about that. Let me know what you think.